Good evening, everybody. Another month has flown by. It's a month that has returned certainly me to closer to normality because I actually took my first trip since COVID started. I went back east to DC in Florida and just came back just in time to welcome tonight's guest. And tonight we have a guest whose face may be familiar to some of you who are watching because she's been on many, many TV shows and movies. Um, and I looked at the list and recognized a lot of the names, and I'm not much of a TV or movie person myself. Um, I am delighted to welcome Twinkle Burke, who you may have seen in shows like Succession or Murphy Brown, The Good Fight, movies like Gotham, Englishman in New York, um, and an upcoming movie that I'm sure Twinkle will talk to us about called Linoleum. I think it may have been a TV show or an HBO or something even before that. I'm not really sure. But we'll ask Linoleum. We'll ask Linoleum. We'll ask Twinkle about Linoleum. How about that? Welcome, Twinkle.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm well. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right.
I'm glad you're right. Now, look, I have a question to ask you first of all, because your placeholder on your camera was a beautiful picture of you arm in arm with Michelle Obama. Can you tell us how that
Yes.
came about, please?
I was doing a show called Familiar at Woolly Mammoth. It's written by Danai Gurira, and it was also in the cast was a Chicago actor named Cheryl Lynn Bruce, whose husband is Kerry James Marshall, and the Obamas have his artwork in their offices, and they know each other. They socialize a little bit. So we were in DC, and Michelle Obama was having a women's night out and decided to come see our show. And we were very honored that she came backstage because we found out that she doesn't always come backstage. And she spent 45 minutes talking to us, and she's more than you'd ever imagined she'd be. She is spectacular. So it was really a great thrill to meet her and to get to take that picture and have her in the
Oh
audience.
my gosh. Yeah, I mean, it's always occurred to me that Barack Obama is a very fortunate man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We actually had a painting in the back in the set, um, and that said Michelle Obama for president. And she actually looked at it and went, no, it's never happening. No.
Um, I have to blame. I have to empathize with her. I don't blame her because I think that it's a pretty thankless job, and
Yeah.
and and I think you have to have an ego that is a lot bigger than her ego, and I think we welcome that.
Well, yeah, it's a nice dream though. It's
Yeah,
definitely a nice dream.
so tell me about you. Um, I looked at your background and it looks to me like you started off as a dancer. Is that right?
I did indeed. I was a dancer for a long time. I was a professional dancer for a long time. I had always been interested in acting and took acting classes on and off. I went to University of North Carolina School of the Arts as a high school dance major though, and they didn't allow you to cross majors. So I was a ballet major for a while and I wanted to take modern classes and they said no, and then they said yes, and then I switched to modern, but they would never let me take any acting classes. So I continued when I left there. I was at Alvin Ailey and then I stopped dancing. I had an injury and then just realized that my heart wasn't in it anymore and I went full time into acting.
Oh, I figured something had to have happened, and I was going to ask you what, and you told me, and now you've told us it was an injury. Um,
Well, no,
Hopefully, it hasn't left you.
I'm sorry. The show that I talk about here, I actually was a dancer in it just to prove that I could still do it after the injury.
Oh, right.
And I proved it and then I quit. I
Then you
was like,
quit.
that's enough. Yeah.
Then you quit. Then that was enough. So where did you grow up?
I was born in New York City. I lived there on and off. We traveled around a little bit, my mother and I, and then I ended up back after I left high school. I just moved back to the East Village in Manhattan.
No, I lived in Manhattan for 11 years altogether in two phases. So, but I never lived in the East Village. So I don't know that area very well,
Yeah,
I'm
I was actually
afraid.
baptized in St. Mark's in the Bowery Church.
All
And then
right.
my mother told me years later, I lived in the same apartment on 14th Street between Avenue A and B,
Yeah.
that that was one of the first places that we lived. Like
Oh,
it
yeah,
was,
but
yeah,
Avenue A and B only just makes it into the East Village, right?
it wasn't called the East Village though.
No, it
East
was the
Village came
alphabet
with
streets.
gentrification and all of those things to have a cute
Yeah,
name. So
yeah. And then where have you spent most of your life since then? In New York? I mean, you now live in a very beautiful part of New York State. I know a little bit about that area. It's just gorgeous up there. I mean, that Hudson River Valley Gorge is incredibly beautiful.
it is beautiful. We moved to Beacon a few years ago. We were living in a Lower East Side tenement, 507.5 square feet with our tub and our kitchen.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and yeah, nothing, it wasn't expanding. Our family was expanding, but so we moved, I guess we moved in 2014, I think. Up to we're in Beacon, New York. It's commutable to the city. So I mean, right now, because of the pandemic, I audition here in my house mostly.
Okay.
I think, yeah, I auditioned in my house. I have callbacks in my house most of the time. And then when I book things, I go into the city.
Okay. Now, I kind of screwed up this linoleum thing because I was looking and I know you're at South by Southwest, but I know that it also goes back more than recently and it was on a while back. So tell us about Linoleum, which is your upcoming movie.
Linoleum is a film that I auditioned for. I didn't get the first role I auditioned for. I auditioned for next one. It was actually the character I play is named Eugenia and was actually originally Eugene. Um,
Oh,
and it was written for a Caucasian man. But the director, I guess, liked enough of what I did. We
how
shot it up
cool.
here in Saugerties, which is great.
Yeah.
And of course, we've had postponements because of COVID, and they entered into South by Southwest competition, which I think was maybe last week sometime, maybe the week before. I'm not sure. I mean, that was the world premiere. I'm not sure when it's going to be released in theaters, but it stars Jim Gaffigan, Tony Shalhoub, Ray Seahorn, um, and it's a really lovely story. I don't want to give too much away. There's a lot of stuff that goes on with it, but it's a lovely story. It has teenagers and discovering about themselves and their relationships with each other and their parents and spaceships, things like that. Fun.
Ooh. I was going to ask you for tidbits, but family spaceships. I mean, this sounds pretty good. I mean, this is enough that we all want to go. And where will we find it on Netflix or will we find it in the movie
I
theater
really
or do
don't
you know?
know. I don't know what's happening after this. The South by Southwest competition was like a week and a half ago, and I don't
Hmm.
know if they found a distributor or not. So we're just waiting to see.
Well, we're getting to that time where we're going to ask you to perform, and I kind of have avoided talking about the condition that you're coming on to perform about because I think that it's going to come out of your piece. And I thought, well, I wouldn't go there, and we'll let the audience find out what it is exactly that you want to the message you want to convey to us. So
Sure.
why don't I pass it on to you and this is Twinkle Burke's performance piece.
Thank you. I did a show once, a musical based on the life of Josephine Baker. I thought she was fascinating. Not her danse sauvage, topless and bananaed, it was the Rainbow Tribe. 12 children from everywhere. And I always wanted to be a mom, and I always wanted to have children. I imagined that I would have 5 children by 5 different men, and then I would adopt more. But my real goal was to be a mother. And then I finally found someone I wanted to have children with. But Brad has been asking me to marry him for a solid year. And it's not that I don't love him and want to spend the rest of my life with him. It's just that I've seen so few examples of good, loving, steady marriages. I don't want to jinx our relationship. If it's not broken, don't fix it, right? But when the subject of having children comes up, he digs in his heels. He is staunchly refusing to agree to me getting pregnant unless we're married. And he takes no notice of the fact that I show him examples in my family and his of women that have had children without getting married. I mean, I even showed him examples of women around the globe who have had children without being in wedlock. Lock. Why is it called lock? Anyway, he said there would be no children between us unless there were nuptials. So I acquiesced. We get married at my family reunion in September and remove the goalie on the wedding night. Wouldn't that be something if I got pregnant on our wedding night? I am giddy at the prospect. But 3 months later, I find out that not only have I booked a show in Buffalo, New York, but I'm pregnant. Go! Oh, I did the math, and I figured I wouldn't be showing until the show closed. And the costume designer said that she would build costumes for me with room to grow just in case. Buffalo, New York, here I come. The trip to Buffalo was a blur of canceled flights and taxis and snowstorms, but we finally make it. And the theater has a tradition of taking the cast to have an authentic buffalo wing dinner on their arrival night. But because our flights were canceled, they tacked it on the end of our first full day of rehearsal. I'm exhausted. I just want to go back to the apartment and rest. But the company manager tells me it would be in extremely bad form to miss this dinner. And other than a little bloating and ankle swelling, I feel fine, so I go. I haven't worked with these actors before. 2 of the women are from New York City, and the one man in the cast is from Chicago. And I'm excited because one of the women, let's call her Diane, she has kids. She is a working actor who has kids. And I think she is going to be a great mentor. I mean, she's done lots of plays with music and lots of musicals on and off Broadway. She's even sang the theme song for a popular PBS children's TV show. I mean, I plan to continue to work, and I'm going to be a working actor and parent. And I think she can show me how it's done. What a stroke of luck. I'm so excited to be in the company of these people. The play is written by a Black man. The director is a Black woman. The entire cast is Black. The company manager is a Black woman. Wow. I've rarely been in an all-Black cast before, and it feels like the warmth and comfort of home and safety oozing all the way to and through my limbs. My baby and I are going to be just fine. I breathe a sigh of relief. Oh, it should be mentioned that almost 100% of regional theaters do a Black-centered or themed show in February to virtue signal Black History Month. The other 11 months of the year, the casts are mostly palm-colored, and it hasn't changed that much. But I digress. We are at the world famous Anchor Bar restaurant where buffalo wings have originated, and we just finished dinner. Diane's sitting in with the band, and witnessing her talent is such a thrill. I am looking so forward to learning from her. And the theater has housed us in the same apartment building on the same floor, just a few doors from each other. I am imagining after rehearsal dinners full of laughter, sharing secrets, advice, and shimmering. And we reach her door, and just as I'm saying goodnight, she looks me up and down with a face that looks like she smelled something bad and she's tasting it too. How do you think you're going to get any work? Well, I guess you could get a voiceover job. And with that, she shuts the door. I'm left standing in my snow boots in the hallway, feeling like my coat has been ripped open, exposing my belly, my baby. I will myself to breathe. The character I'm playing's name is Lou Bessie, and she looms over the entire play. She's talked about in every scene, but has very, very little stage time. That leaves me a lot of time on my hands, so I plan nutritious foods that I can take with me to keep my energy up, and Brad and I talk a lot about our growing family. I'm finally going to be a mother. I'm sitting in the green room on the couch with my legs outstretched, trying to alleviate some of the swelling that I am sure is pregnancy-induced. And I'm studying my lines. The cast is on a 5 and they've scattered. I look up and I see Diane in the doorway. "Good morning," I chirp at her, smile spreading across my face, hoping that last night was an anomaly or indigestion. She holds the door jamb and leans back, looks over her shoulder down the hallway, then over her other shoulder into the empty studio. She hoists herself back up and she says, "You have no business getting a job where anyone has to look at your figure." She sucks her teeth and she walks away. I'm frozen. It feels like someone has shaken a rattlesnake and thrown it at me. Her words sandpaper my eyes. The stage manager pops in and says the break is over and we're going to start with my scenes. Numbly, I stumble into the rehearsal studio. I know people are talking, but all I hear are Diane's words thundering in my ear. I sit in the corner and I try to focus on the script. The rest of the rehearsal is a blur, but I guess I did all right because the director lets us go home early. I need to get back to the apartment. I need to call Brad. I leave so quickly that the ride that was offered by the other actor, I miss it. I trudge through the buffalo snow. Brad's able to calm me down, and we come up with a plan for me to avoid Diane. I'm sad, but I know I need to protect myself and my baby from her venom. Because of my pregnancy, I feel like I have to pee all the time. Sometimes I can barely make it to the mandated actors' equity breaks. It's on one such break that I first see it. Blood. It's not a lot, it's just a spot, but I'm not supposed to be bleeding, am I? I go back to rehearsal and I feel my breath shorten and quicken. I don't want to tell anybody. Maybe I didn't see it. Maybe I imagined it. My focus becomes laser sharp and I will myself to not go to the bathroom again until I get back to the apartment. And there it is again. What does that mean? What do I do? I call Brad, and once again, he calms me down. He soothes me. He says, maybe it's the stress of being around Diane or being away from home or the show. He says that he's heard that sometimes in early pregnancy, women spot, and he tells me not to worry. But I am worried. My baby. I will myself to breathe. A few days later, it's not just spots. I am definitely bleeding. And I don't want to tell the director or the company manager for fear they'll tell Diane and she'll weaponize the information. So instead, I go to Sarah. She's the costume assistant. She's a 20-something white redheaded girl who exudes comfort and warmth. I feel safe with her. She lives in Buffalo, and she makes me an appointment to see her gynecologist, Dr. Simi. It feels like all of the women in the production have bonded. All of them except me. We're being driven to our weekly grocery store run by the company manager, and their laughter just fills the van. And whenever I chime in, silence blankets the air. No one is openly talking about my pregnancy. It's the elephant in the room. The elephant Diane implies that I am. Our director talks about how she spotted and bled through both of her pregnancies. Do they know? Did Sarah tell them? I feel reassured and terrified at the same time. And I can feel Diane's penetrating gaze, but I refuse to look at her because I know if we make eye contact, she will pounce. Human chorionic gonadotropin, or HCG. It's a hormone that levels rise when a woman is pregnant to help feed and sustain the pregnancy. Dr. Simi runs a series of tests and takes my blood and tells me we'll have the results in a few days. And she said that it's possible that the bleeding is implantation. It happens with a lot of women, and she tells me not to worry. But I am worried. My baby. I will myself to breathe. The next few days, I feel like I'm floating through gel. I have so much downtime, and Brad is on tour now. I spend my time ignoring the bleeding and watching mindless TV. Regional theater isn't as glamorous as some people may think it is. You're in a strange town where you don't know anybody. I wish I had a bigger part so I could slip inside Lou Bessie and rest and ignore the bleeding and become invisible. I schedule completely unnecessary rehearsals with the other actor. I mean, I know my lines. I just have to keep myself occupied. Dr. Simi leaves me a message and she says, my HCG levels are low, but they're within normal range, and I need to come in for an ultrasound to check for the heartbeat and to draw more blood. Coincidentally, Sarah has the morning off too, and she takes me to my appointment. The nurse draws my blood, and I go into the examination room and change the gown, and I wait. Dr. Simi glides in. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until she asked me how I was feeling. She'd make small talk as she spreads gel on my stomach. It's sticky and cold, and I close my eyes while she uses the wand to spread the gel and peer inside me. It's quiet. She stopped talking. Her breath becomes even, slow. She gently places her hand on my arm and she says, "I'm so sorry." I close my eyes. Twinkle, you have to open your eyes. You have to see. I open my eyes and I see nothing. My baby. Sarah and I don't talk in the car. My breathing is a sharp series of short inhales that never release. I have to get to the apartment. I have to call Brad. I have to. I have to will myself to breathe. I'm keeping myself very busy in the flurry of school visits and pre-show talks and post-show talks, the show, going to karaoke with Sarah, whatever I can do to suffocate my sorrow. The men on the crew who had always been so friendly and talkative, they don't even look at me now. And they barely speak to me. It looks like my sorrow is suffocating them too. Diane continues to snipe at me every chance she gets. And even though it's so scary for me to be alone after one particularly cruel and brutal attack on my body, I go to stage management and I ask to have my dressing room changed. No one questions it. I have to go to Dr. Simi's office every few days to get my HCG levels checked. My body is refusing to accept the truth and is taking a painstakingly long time to let go. At my last visit, the nurse is unable to draw blood. She sticks the needle in a few times, but nothing comes out. My body has set up a boundary. You've taken enough. I've lost enough. It's enough. Dr. Simi wraps me in an embrace. And when I stop sobbing, I see that she is crying too. It's finally closing night. I spent the last few days packing to go home. Everything feels different. Pre-baby, post-baby. I resist the urge to just throw everything away. When I was packing to come to Buffalo, my clothes, my music, my books, everything was embedded with such hope and joy. And now it's just weighted with grief. During the last and final curtain call of the show, I burst into tears. I made it. I held on to Lou Bessie for dear life, to save my life, while losing a life. My baby. I will myself to breathe.
Oh my gosh. Let me give you a minute to recover from your performance. And what we're going to be talking about tonight is the issue of women having miscarriages, which happens all too frequently and to all too many women. And we rarely talk about it. And we're going to talk about it tonight. And we're going to hopefully explore with Twinkle how we can bring about some comfort in that situation. Twinkle, when did you write that?
I started it in January, excuse me, of this year, and then I finished it. I've been editing it and tweaking it up until about last week.
So what I'm surprised to hear, or maybe the audience is surprised to hear, is this is such a cathartic piece. And yet, I think I can disclose you have a 17-year-old son.
I do.
Who came after the miscarriage, and you have a wonderful marriage with a well-known saxophonist.
Mm-hmm. There's
Brad
Ezra.
Oh, there's Ezra. Okay.
Yeah. There's a better picture.
All right.
That's an old picture, but yeah.
And your husband Brad is a well-known performer.
Mm-hmm.
Brad Hubbard.
Yes.
So
performer and composer, yes.
Performer and composer. So why now, after many, many years, and I don't want to give everything away right up front, but why now after so many years? What made you start writing this in January?
Well, John and I had met during this group called London Writers Salon, and they meet 4 times a day in 4 different time zones from 8 to 9 in the morning. And so it's an incredible supportive community. And on Wednesdays, we have what they call the mingles, or the Wednesday friendlies. And John and I met in one of these breakout rooms, and we started talking. And I guess, actually, because I saw Diane.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I saw this. That is not her name, but
how was that?
What?
How was that?
It was because I saw her once shortly after that happened, and I didn't talk to her. But right. One of the first callback I had to go in person, and it was with a celebrity, and the celebrity was having some phone issue with somebody. So we had to sit there, and you had all of these actors. We haven't seen each other in 18 months. And we're sitting there for an hour, and they keep telling us to be quiet. And I had just done a proof of concept series with this one woman. So we're talking, and I look and I notice and I see Diane. And this other woman, Johnny May, and I took a picture together, and we sent it to our director. And Diane looks at it and goes, "Johnny May, who is that?" And she goes, "That's Twinkle." And I knew it was her. So I had just I had another audition to prepare for. So I just sat back, and they wanted us to be quiet. So I was quiet. And it was very interesting because she walked by, she wouldn't look at me, and she said, "Twinkle." And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "I think we may know each other, hon." And I said, "Oh, yeah." And she goes, "Good to see you." And I said, "Yeah." But I just, I'm happy. I have a wonderful family. I don't know what's going on with her. I don't care, but it was really, so that had come up, and I was talking in the mingle in the breakout room about that. And so John had said, "Would you be willing to write about it and perform it?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I'm here.
So we should mention that John Ivory is our producer, and that he kept very quiet about being such an instigator in this whole project. Oh my gosh, who knew? Who knew?
I
Well,
see.
all right. So that's really quite amazing. I mean, it seemed to me as I was listening that maybe you wrote it soon after as a cathartic piece to help you work through the emotions of the miscarriage.
No, I wrote it this year.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah, but that's something about grief.
Mhm.
It comes in waves. And so I think about this time often. There is the Church of the Holy Innocents. I forgot what street it's on in Manhattan, but one of the things that my husband and I did, it's a Catholic church. I am not Catholic. But they have a book of babies. You can put your baby's name in it if
Oh,
you had a
wow.
stillborn or this.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
we went to this church and we had sent them the letter and they put baby Hubbard in the book, and I got to go and see the name in the book, and it's a really big book. And every time I get a chance, I go and I light a candle.
Oh, wow. That's
So
really beautiful. That's
yeah,
beautiful. Now, this was not your only miscarriage, correct?
unfortunately, no. I had
Speak
one
to
after.
us.
I had one after this.
Mhm.
I don't have a timeline on that one.
Mhm.
But yes, I had two. Um, and and you and I touched on this a little bit before. I think it was somewhere, I don't know whether it was between the first and second, but recognizing that my husband was also grieving,
Mhm.
grieving the loss, because when you get pregnant, and especially if it's intentional, you
Mhm.
immediately start thinking about, oh,
Mhm.
am I going to have a boy or a girl? Like, we didn't find out. We've never found out what sex the baby was. It was one of the last few positive surprises in your life. Like, oh, it's a boy. It pissed off my mother-in-law because she wanted to know whether she had to buy pink or blue. And I'm kind of like, that's my point. Like, we're not doing that. But I did recognize that I wasn't grieving alone. That, you do absolutely think about, school or friends or what you want them to do, what you don't want them to do, how you're going to follow in your parents' footsteps or not, you know, immediately when you get pregnant. And me not knowing that miscarriage was so common. I maybe if I'd known it was so common, I would have responded a little differently. But, for a while I thought, oh, it's just me. There's something wrong with me. There's a defect with me. And it's not. It was through no fault of the woman that is carrying the baby.
Have you, this is maybe some research we could have done in advance, but I'm just wondering how common it is. How many pregnancies wind up in miscarriages?
I don't know the exact number, but it is quite a few. The other thing that I noticed, and I had talked to a friend about this, is that if you are a normal, healthy, sexually active woman, you
Mhm.
spend many years telling your body, don't get pregnant, right? Don't do it.
Yeah,
Can't you
yeah.
find all sorts of ways, 6 ways till Sunday to not get pregnant? And then you decide to get pregnant and you expect your body to go, okay,
Yeah, here
just
we
like
go.
that,
Yeah, it takes,
and
it takes,
that's a little
it takes,
unrealistic sometimes, I think.
well, yeah, and I mean, it's a significant adjustment to the body to be caring for two people rather than one. And it's very much an emotional adjustment. But I'm really grateful to you for acknowledging that that there are two parties to a pregnancy when it happens intentionally and
Mhm.
it's planned, and that we don't often think about the male in the relationship also going through the emotional loss of the child.
Right.
But surely he does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Brad was a part of a chamber music quartet, saxophone quartet. And after the first miscarriage, I think it was the first one, we had to postpone a recording. But he practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced and still through that grief, and then went to do the recording, and was completely prepared. And some of the other members of the group weren't, and he's like, I grieved through this and did all, and he may have used some of the practice time to, have a cathartic experience through the music.
So do you think, both for you and for Brad, you may have discussed with Brad, otherwise you can't answer, but you can answer for yourself. Do you think that your performance in Buffalo and Brad's and the piece that Brad produced in this quartet, that the result was different than it might have been if you hadn't have gone through the experience of the miscarriage?
I don't know. I mean, I literally, like I said in the I was holding on to the 10 minutes. I had 2 5-minute scenes in this 1 hour and a half play, and I lived for those moments. And it wasn't a particularly there was no cathartic crying or emotional thing. My character is pretty scheming and vindictive, so it wasn't. But I hadn't ever really thought about whether
maybe your colleague in this should have had your part.
No, her character was spicy enough. It was,
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think the outcome of the play would have been any different. I think my experience in Buffalo would have been a little different. I mean, like, I remember that once Dr. Simi had said, this is no longer viable. This is this, because I hadn't been drinking, nothing. And I think the first night I had 2 drinks, and I woke up the next day like, whoa, hey, what was that? It was totally, yeah. And I just thought, gosh, I've become a total lightweight. What's happening? And it was, but, everything was so, I talk about feeling like I'm going through gel. Everything just felt so surreal to me. And, as I said, I was going to karaoke. I hate karaoke, but I wasn't going to go sit back in that apartment by myself all night, so I witnessed a lot of karaoke.
So, John, my research team in the form of Mr. Ivory informs us that about 10 to 20% of pregnancies wind up in miscarriages, and that's a huge number. What are you aware of any support that is available for women who do miscarry? How should we be handling this? How should we be addressing this? This is an unspoken health crisis.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, other than, going to the Church of Holy Innocents and doing that, and I actually remember getting dressed up for my baby to go see my baby's name in the book. Right. I don't remember. It's through the old St. Vincent's and the old birthing center that was on 14th Street in Manhattan. But they had a ceremony once a year. And I remember being cold. It was January or something like that, for everybody that had miscarried or had a stillbirth or any issue. And there was a support group that met once a month. But every January, you would get a little ceramic angel for each baby. Wow. And I remember that being a really significant memorial for me. And I remember one year my mom came to visit, so it must have been around Christmas, but my mom was in town, and each time I went to the ceremony, it was like it had just happened, and it was still very cathartic, but it was still, I was mourning such a loss. And so I think that there are support groups in hospitals, maybe, that that do that. I have not looked for one, obviously, for a while, but I did make some good friends, you know, and it was anybody that had lost a child in any different way. So it wasn't, that was what our common bond was. So I'm pretty sure that there are support groups. I don't, you know, have they moved on Zoom? Probably. You know, I was on an online one as well, and I think I might have just Googled it and found them. But the important part is to talk about it, and also let, especially the mother, know it's not your fault. It's not uncommon. It's nothing you did wrong. Because it's a journey. It's a process of going from, I'm going to have this, you know, Ivy League bound, whatever, you know, superstar kid. When you find out you're pregnant, you know, you're like 3 weeks pregnant and you've already planned everything.
Yeah.
To just suddenly just being like, nope, that's not happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very interesting tradition that many observe in the Jewish religion, where you don't purchase anything for the baby, anything, except maybe possibly a car seat to get the baby home. Until you get the baby home, you don't create a nursery until the baby is home. You're really staying in that moment, and I see the benefit. And you know, it sort of strikes home to me when you talk about the grief and the fact that, you know, even with a loving family and a great 17-year-old, 18-year-old, that the grief stays with you. My mother lost her first child when he was, I think, 8 or 9 days old. And I think, and I know that was a serious psychological impediment to her through the rest of her life, and in raising me and raising my sister. But she never spoke about it, but it was always there. And so I guess the question I have for you is, what can we do? The support groups are one thing. What words of advice do you have to, I mean, there may be people watching this right now who have recently lost a child, or a child of theirs has recently lost a child. I guess, and that's another issue. We don't talk about grandparents either, do we? And we talk about the husband, but what about the grandparents? How do they feel?
The thing is because people don't, like, I had to defend my grief.
Yeah.
And I had to defend my grief with people in my family.
Yeah.
I had to defend my grief with Brad. He used to go on a flute and saxophone retreat, and I'd go as the wife. It's my favorite thing because I didn't have to do anything. I could just hang out. And the woman whose family owned it wanted us to do all these performances, and I just wasn't up for it. And I remember saying to her, she's like, why won't you perform? Why won't you perform? And I said, I had a miscarriage. And she goes, well, that was months ago. And it was like, you don't get to decide how long I grieve. You know, it was a couple months ago, so it should be over it. You know, and you ask, what should we do? I just think in terms of, you know, let people grieve how they're going to grieve. And you can grieve. You know, there were people that challenged me that I didn't really have a baby, so I shouldn't be upset. And this was a good friend of mine, and I just thought, well, yeah, but I was pregnant, you know, and I had all those hopes and dreams. So I think the thing to do is to really just treat people with grace. You know, give this person the space and the grace to have. I mean, and clearly this was a long time ago, and I'm not, you know, every day I'm not getting up going, my baby, you know,
yeah, but it's there. No,
but still, like, doing this piece, like, even as I was rehearsing it, like, catching those moments of, oh, right, that's what this felt like, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever used your performance art to help you or to help somebody else heal, um, like you're doing with this piece?
Um, yeah, I guess sort of. There's a group I work with quite a bit called the TMI Project, and they do a series of workshops around social justice and all sorts of other things. And um, I think one of the first, excuse me, one of the first workshops I did with them was called Black Stories Matter, Truth to Power. And Ezra did it with me. And
Oh,
the beautiful
wow.
thing is that they have you do all this free writing and then they edit it for you.
Mhm.
I love that part. I was like, I don't have to edit my own
Mhm.
work. This is excellent. And then you perform it. And they're also the TMI, so the too much information. It's the places that might be really painful, or there's guilt or fear or anger, and you write from there. And it's not only cathartic for you, but it also has been cathartic for the audience. um the piece that I did the first time was called I'm not a nurse, I'm not a teacher or a nurse, but I play one on TV. And it talks about the fact that Black women are often cast in these roles to nurture, to teach.
Mhm.
um if you start looking, I mean, now we're branching out into judges, but but a lot of times, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I auditioned to play a nurse constantly, or a
Mhm.
teacher. Nurse is mostly it. And then it goes into some other things that have happened. One of the things that happened with that particular group, since it was all Black writers, we had a lot of the same experiences in different places. And so that writing, becomes very cathartic. Ezra's piece was basically, am I Black enough or am I too white? Because my husband is, as I like to say, pigmentally challenged. Um,
Right.
so, Ezra is biracial. And so he wrote from that place. And he did that performance early in the pandemic. We did it at a high school, well, on Zoom at a high school for a high school class. And the kids were just in the chat really writing how, oh yeah, that happened to me. Oh, I know that. I know this. So I think that almost any time that you do any sort of creative activity, whether it's writing or performing or even through music, you're touching people, you're communicating something, and you're allowing people to have a shared experience with you.
Mhm. Mhm. So, if the audience has any questions, get them in quick because we don't have a lot more time. Um, I had I had another comment I wanted to make, and I really a question really based on something I heard this morning on NPR, and I wonder what you thought of this. That there's a new opera around Emmett Till that's
Oh,
just
sheesh. Go on. Yes.
and somebody and there were objections from people of color that um, that it debases the incident and the evidence. And since you've done a lot of work with all black companies, all black artists, what do you think of that?
The little
What's your
bit I know
response
of
to that?
that is that it
Mm.
was written by a white woman and it's not her story to tell.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Okay.
and that's really, excuse me, the most I know about it. I haven't researched it because um, it's not her story to tell. I'm not going to go see it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
that, no, I'm not sure. She may have done a wonderful job. And I don't know whether she
Mm-hmm.
was commissioned to do this or not. I mean, if she was commissioned to
Mm-hmm.
do it, then I would go straight to the person that commissioned. But the fact that she thought it was her place to tell this story is I think disrespectful. I
But
think
if it had been a person of color who wrote it, or if there's another incidence around a black person, do you feel it's reasonable to if in context, to use the performance stage to increase awareness around such events or not?
No, I think done the right way, done with dignity and respect. And the fact is that this woman is not a Black woman. She can't speak to this.
Right.
You know, this particular instance, which is not saying that only Black people can write about Black people. I mean, it's not the August Wilson, you know, when he said that Black actors should only do Black theater. And I was like, I'll never make a living. I don't think that that's true. But especially with something this particular case, that's this specific, I don't think that it should have been touched by anybody that wasn't Black, that wouldn't be touched by that story.
Okay. Well, with that, we've come to the end of our time. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
You've touched the audience because there are comments that we'll pass on to you that clearly show that. And when an actor touches their audience, that's success, in my opinion. I just want to say to the audience, to our audience, that we'll be back again next month. We have an astonishing guest who has also done her own TED Talk. She is a quadriplegic as a result of her multiple sclerosis, and she's an artist. And I've had some contact with her before, and she's simply remarkable. Her name is Elizabeth Jameson. And so please come back on the 4th Wednesday of next month and join us some more. Please don't forget the tip jar for the Marsh, as always. And if check ancan.org out, because we have many support groups for many different conditions. We're just going to be starting a new group for pancreatic cancer. If you know anybody that might be living or recently diagnosed with that condition, and a group for lupus, and a group for chronic pain coming up soon. And with that, I'll say good night, and I'll hand it back to Brianna.